for oil, a war for gold, a war for money, and a war for souls. A war on terror, a war on drugs, a war on kindness, a war on hugs, a war on birds and a war on bees. They got a war on hippies trying to save the trees. A war with jets and a war with missiles, a war with high-seated government officials, Wall Street war on high finance.
Okay, this is Steve Zeltzer with Workweek, and there is a new military alliance which most Americans don't know about it. It's called Australian UK US Military Alliance, AUKUS, and part of that alliance is the building of a nuclear submarine plant in southwest Australia. And there's going to be a MayDay demonstration on May 6th at the Port of Kembla, where the proposed nuclear submarine base is going to be. And there's already organized an effort of environmentalists, youth, and labor against this new base and against AUKUS. And joining us today is Luke. Why don't you introduce yourself, Luke?
Hi, my name's Luke. I'm an activist. I'm a socialist here in Wollongong, which is where Port Kembla is, on the east coast, the other side. There's stuff happening on the west coast too, but we're over here on the east, just below Sydney.
And why have you formed this action on May the 6th as part of the MayDay events?
Yeah, well, the May the 6th event is actually really promising, really important event, because it's not just organised through our campaign group, but mainly through the South Coast Labour Council, so the trade union body, peak trade union body for the region. So it's going to be a trade union demonstration, like workers from all over Wollongong, all over, even coming down from Sydney, are going to be coming down to say no to the drive to war and no to the nuclear submarine base. So it's actually really, really good that we've managed to get this march.
And what would the effect be of a U.S. nuclear subbase in that port?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's all the immediate stuff, right? Like, before you even talk about what's wrong with, like, the nuclear-powered submarines, all the things that can go wrong, like, there's been over a dozen incidents released of the UK submarines having accidents. So, before you even talk about all of that, there's just the effect that having a military base in a town, and especially a military base that's going to host foreign troops, has just on the local community, Like, violence goes up, like, instances of sexual assaults go up. This happens in, like, Okinawa in Japan, where there's military bases, American military bases. It happens everywhere where military bases are put. So it's, before you even talk about the problems, particularly of the nuclear subs, it's like, it's going to transform our town, and not for the better.
And there's some opposition in the labor movement to this agreement and the base. Why don't you talk about that opposition? Because in the United States, most of the unions, the AFL-CIO, are supporting the military buildup and the encirclement of China. They seem to have bought the line that China is a threat to the United States.
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, it's the case that most of the union movement here is also, they're also guilty of that. So the trade union movement in Australia, they're mostly politically aligned to the Australian Labor Party, who are in government right now. And so they're the ones who are pursuing the AUKUS alliance. They're the ones who are, trying to put this nuclear submarine base in our town. But that said, there's a history of, like, anti-nuclear campaigning, particularly in the Australian union movement, that means that a few unions, like the Electricians Union, the Maritime Union, that's the wharfies here, they have a long-standing position, and actually on a, theoretically, the ACTU, the confederation of the trade union movement in this country, they have on paper an anti-nuclear policy. So it's about holding them to that as far as we're concerned. But locally, there's been, the unions have been much better. So, like I said, the South Coast Labour Council, they've called this demonstration. They're really unhappy with having this nuclear base here, partly on the basis of what it's going to do to the local community, but also, the effects that it's going to have on workers here. Like, not just in the narrow kind of, economistic sense that it's going to be bad for workers if a bunch of, future, like, industry is barred because the military doesn't like it or whatever, but it's going to be bad for, the workers who have to live in this part of the world, and it's going to be bad for workers all across the world if the war drive keeps going. So I think seeing that it's a really positive development that the union movement locally is serious about, fighting against this base, and that gives us strength that, we wouldn't have otherwise.
And the argument has been that China is a threat to Australia. It may invade Australia. At the same time, Australia exports a lot of its product already to China. Isn't that the case?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we should be careful about thinking that just because two countries are trading, they're never going to go to war. Actually, in the lead up to the war with Japan, like in the Pacific theatre of World War II, right up until war was declared, Australia was shipping steel from here, actually, from Wollongong, or trying to ship steel to Japan right up until the minute when war was declared. So it's not like just trade itself means that you have peace, actually, I think. And so we should be, wary of accepting the argument that it's, against Australian capitalism's interest to go to war with China. I think, the Australian capitalist class and the politicians who serve them have been very clear. They want to protect the sea lanes, the trade routes that go through the South China Sea. They're worried that a stronger China means they won't be able to do that. They won't make as much profits, by shipping through those important lanes. And so that's why they're willing to back the United States in this, potential horrific conflict, I think.
And the United States has been quite actively involved in Australia, getting Australia supports for U.S. military and political operations around the world. It's also involved in removing a prime minister in Australia.
Yeah. I mean, partly, I think it's obviously different for you guys over there, but here we have to, I think, emphasize that our main enemy is our own capitalist class, the rich and powerful in our own country, that they actually were the main people orchestrating the Whitlam dismissal. It's like a constitutional coup that happened in the 70s here. And, they did have support from, like the American establishment, the British establishment too. But in the end, I think, ultimately, for us here in this country, we need to be clear that it's not like Australia just does whatever America says, is bullied by America or anything like that. The Australian capitalist class and the Australian government, they pursue the US alliance because it helps them to pursue their own interests, in the region, their imperialist interests in the Pacific and in, Southeast Asia, like more generally.
And the Labor government in Australia, which is supported by the unions, is supporting this military base. Is there opposition to that position nationally, that they would be supporting a U.S. nuclear base in Australia?
It's hard to tell. The Labor branches are not as alive as they used to be back when the union movement was stronger, but it is notable that, again, locally, the Labor branches have actually, so the Port Kembla Labor branch and another one near Wollongong have actually taken they voted to take a position against the nuclear submarine base. That, I think, says something when even the, members of the Labor Party think that this is beyond the pale, that this is not acceptable, that, there is real feeling, even among people who do politically support the government, the party in government.
And there's going to be a rally in conjunction with yours in Port Kembla in San Francisco on May the 6th. What do you say to Americans? What do you suggest that they do and around the world to oppose this expansion of militarization in Asia?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got a big struggle ahead of us, I think. America is really committed to confronting China. The last thing they want is an imperialist competitor that can actually match them economically, that can outstrip them economically. And I think America knows that, and the Biden administration and the American government knows that what they've got is they have a bunch of guns and a bunch more guns than anyone else. And I think that they want to leverage that into, economic advantage. And so it's going to be difficult, I think, to stop this war drive, but we have to build now. Workers around the world have to fight against the drive to war. We have to, build protests wherever we can. And where it's possible, and especially where we have the industrial strength and the unions are, strong enough to be in a position to, we need to be trying to actually stop the basis for this war. We need to be striking against the war industries. We need to be, anywhere where a new weapons, a new military base, a new weapons industry is trying to be built, we need to put black bans on that. The union movement should refuse to be involved in the build up to war as much as we can. So, that's kind of the dream. That's where we're, aiming for, but we're a long way from that in Australia today. And it seems like, from what I know, there's been some pretty cool stuff in America, unionization drives and things like that in the last couple of years, but probably still some ways off that kind of thing. But we have to build now, we have to be involved in whatever struggles we can now to lay the basis for being able to fully confront, imperialism in general. But yeah, the whole project of the ruling classes of both our countries, which are, marching along arm in arm towards this terrible war.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us on Work Week.